Here's my spoiler-free review of Godzilla King of Monsters. Godzilla's had a special place in my heart ever since I was a kid. In fact, it's no overstatement to say that Godzilla actually changed my life. As a kid, I loved Godzilla movies not only for the monster action and city destruction, but they got me interested in Japanese culture. Later, I would minor in Japanese in college and went on to live in Japan for 4 adventurous years. So I'm by no means an objective observer. In fact, I've been waiting for this movie since I first saw Godzilla and King Kong destroy Atami Castle. To see Toho's famous monsters in a big-budget mainstream production was a lifelong dream of mine. That said, I'm going to give the film 2 separate grades, one for general audiences and the other for true Godzilla aficionados. If your first and only criterion of a good Godzilla movie is the quality and amount of monster battles, then Godzilla King of Monsters is, in fact, the best Godzilla movie ever. There is just no comparison between the monster action in this film with any other in the franchise. Yes, the fights are almost always done at night during stormy weather conditions, but I rarely felt I could not follow the action. I say that with the caveat that you should see this film in a large, high-quality theater. If you go to a theater that cuts corners by running the bulb at half brightness or opt for 3D, you might have some trouble. The kaiju action is intense, well choreographed, and varied. The action takes place in a variety of settings, which gives each fight its own flavor. Director Michael Dougherty keeps coming up with inventive moves and tactics for the monsters, so even though there's a large number of battles, they never got stale. The camera work does an excellent job of reminding us of the awesome scale and power of these creatures, especially during Ghidorah's entrance. The greatest accomplishment of all the monster action is how the personality and emotion of each kaiju is expressed. These are true performances. You can clearly see the motivations and thought processes of each creature. You always know what they are thinking or feeling. This is something that has been missing from the franchise since the Showa era. As cheesy as those movies are by today's standards, the suit actors did an excellent job of making Godzilla and his foes and allies expressive entities. This new film is the first one to do that in a long time. A major standout is Ghidorah. Each of the 3 heads has a unique personality. Now, a lot of the bad feelings for the film have been directed towards the human story. While I would never pay full price to see a film with only the human scenes, it's passable. In truth, the human stories of the Godzilla franchise have always been terrible. At least this film does 2 things right in regard to the human storyline that doesn't kill the film for me. First and most important, the human story directly relates to the monster action. Both the inception of the kaiju action and several of the outcomes of the battles are influenced by the human storyline. In many of the Godzilla films past, the human storyline could have been completely removed and the result of the monster battles would have been the same. Now, this human interaction is due to a fairly ridiculous MacGuffin, but at least it ties the 2 worlds together. Second, the casting is excellent. The original Japanese Godzilla films had generally terrible actors. Here, everyone is really selling it. I didn't catch anyone phoning it in. Ken Watanabe is especially good. In fact, there's a scene with him and a kaiju that I found genuinely moving. Millie Bobby Brown also shows that she will one day be a formidable actress. I have been generally praiseworthy up to this point, but I have to warn you to the film's several serious flaws. The human storyline is told in a jumpy Michael Bay style that's exhausting. The dialogue is full of technobabble. There are several gunfights between human factions that are neither meaningful or well done. My wife and I had a hard time during these scenes telling who was actually getting shot, since only a few of the soldier characters even have been given lines. The human storyline zips breathlessly from one boardroom to another, where people say their lines as fast as possible, without any pause for emotional beats. A fairly significant character gets killed seemingly off-screen, and the only indication is a computer screen telling their fate and one shot of a character looking sad. When the monsters are on the screen, Dougherty seems to have incredible filmmaking confidence, but when the humans take over, you can see that he's desperate to rush things along, even if the scenes call for a few more beats. It's okay to slow the film down now and then. Also, there is the paint-by-numbers broken family drama thrown in that goes nowhere. It must be a requirement by the Writers Guild that anytime there's a giant monster or apocalyptic weather event, you're contractually obligated to attach a watered-down family drama to it. There's also the problem of far too many human characters shoved into the movie. Several of the soldier characters could have been combined into one, and there are two comic relief characters where one would have been sufficient. I suspect several of these characters are included to show up in future MonsterVerse films, as well as for the sake of diversity. Zhang Ziyi is wedged in as the now obligatory ambassador to the lucrative Chinese film market. She's not given much to do, yet I had to forgive the filmmakers because the backstory they allude to for her is just too incredible. Longtime Godzilla fans will glow at it. Finally, the grand design of the human villains has got to be one of the stupidest ever committed to sequentially projected media. It's a terrible shame because with some tweaks to the script and better editing, these problems could have been fixed. The casting is good, and there is the potential of a fairly decent human story to be told here. But the director's lack of faith in the audience's attention span for these scenes killed it. Music has a tremendous effect on film, and in this aspect, the soundtrack is perfect. Bear McCreary of Battlestar Galactica fame takes the original iconic themes of Akira Ifukube and melds them with a modern sound and driving percussion that perfectly fits a modern-day Godzilla film. Get the soundtrack. Also, the cover of Blue Oyster Cult was a home run way to end the film. The only kaiju soundtrack that can compare is Michael Giacchino's for Cloverfield, but that was only one track, titled Roar, that plays over the end credits. McCreary deserves major kudos for his work. The cinematography is a mixed bag. The kaiju battles are set in the dark, rainy conditions, so the work is hard to see at times, but it is nowhere near the failure of the infamous Battle of Westeros in Game of Thrones. Other than that, the bulk of the action takes place in several Monarch secret bases, boardrooms, and command bridges. Again, you can see the director's desperation to manufacture interest during the human scenes, because every wall is festooned with animated radar graphs, charts, and biomonitors. It just gets very distracting. In general, I cannot say the visuals are the strongest aside from the incredible design of the monsters and the rendering of CGI destruction. One exception is an underwater temple setting that's incredibly atmospheric. Of interest only to Godzilla fans, the film is packed full of Easter eggs and references. It's obvious that the filmmakers are true Godzilla fans. Repeat viewings are warranted to catch them all. At the beginning, I promised to give you two separate summaries. At first, as a general moviegoer with only a passing familiarity of the kaiju genre, would I recommend this film? Yes. It's still a good time at the theater and light years better than the Transformers films. It's just about on par with the original Pacific Rim or Independence Day. I would also put Legendary's own Kong Skull Island ahead of King of the Monsters from a pure filmmaking standpoint. The spectacle overcomes the flawed human stories, but just barely in this case. It's unfortunate that with a few tweaks it could have been an excellent film even beyond the scope of Godzilla fans. I would say that the overall best film in the giant monster rampaging genre is Jurassic Park. It had the best combination of action, well-executed effects, and human characters that you actually cared about. Godzilla King of the Monsters could have been that, but for a few more edits. As is, it's middle of the pack at best. Now, as a lifelong Godzilla fan and lover of the giant monster genre, King of Monsters is everything I could have wanted from a kaiju action perspective. A bland human story is an unfortunate price all Godzilla fans have gladly paid for over 60 years now for our chance to see titanic creatures beating the hell out of each other and destroying major cities in the process. The only way I can see a Godzilla fan being disappointed is if you're a purist who cannot abide seeing these films with the action not being portrayed by guys in rubber suits. Granted, if you love the genre, you probably have to love those aesthetics of the original Japanese tokusatsu. If you can't get past that, then King of the Monsters is probably not the film for you. Of course, any film in the kaiju genre that has any kind of budget is going to be all CGI route from now on. As fans, we will always have those original films to look back on. But it's useless for us to not accept that the giant monster genre is all CGI from here on. Personally, I loved it. King of the Monsters is quite possibly my favorite Godzilla movie. Long live the king.